A lot of times we have these patterns in our lives and these ripples that are caused by the effects of our actions. And today we're going to talk a little bit with Pastor Rick and Charissa Motley about how do we disrupt those ripples and waves that we've created in our lives. Welcome to the 167. All right. Hey, welcome back to the 167. I'm here with Pastor Rick George.
Good morning.
And the lovely Charissa Motley.
Good morning.
And the lovelier Lucas Motley. No.
Yeah, whatever.
That feels like a little bit like when Moses writes, Moses was the most humble man to ever walk
Like, you might as well
here.
just tag and handsome in there. Who's the humblest dude you know? And I'm telling you, his hair that day was on point. So this week we were talking again about the butterfly effect, and you started off the message this week with Isaiah 43, right? Isaiah 43:18, it says, "Remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old, but behold, I am doing a new thing, that now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." So I just wanted to start off just by asking both of you, like in culture where you see movements of God, you see God springing up in culture. How do you see some of the trends that are happening in the new generation or the new church? How do you see God making a new way or doing a new thing? Because I think sometimes, so often, I get cynical in the church where I'm just like, this is not new. There's nothing new under the sun. I always tell a story that I literally, when I was like 20-ish, I went to a church plant in Colorado and just sat in on their staff meeting, and they were talking about a prayer labyrinth. And they were like, we're going to do a prayer labyrinth. It's this great new idea in Christendom. And I was like, what is that? And they're like, oh, you have stations. And then people like make their way. I was like, oh, you mean a prayer walk? Like, it's a station-based prayer. Like, perfectly described. They were like, no, it's a prayer labyrinth. I don't think you understand. I'm like, okay. The 1980s called, they like your idea.
Yeah.
So where are some things that you're seeing new growth, new things spring up in people's lives or this next generation of the church right now?
So that is true. There is no new thing under the sun. But it's kind of like when you get a car, it's like new to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is new. It's fresh.
Right.
And those are exciting things when you come across something, the prayer labyrinth or whatever, and you're like, this is awesome. But there's somebody that's like, yeah.
I did that.
Yeah, we've been there.
Right.
But it's new to them.
Right.
So I think that's part of the joy of walking with Christ. Maybe I'll ask it this way. Have you ever read the Bible and like something just jumps off the page and you're like, this is an incredible new truth. And you've read it probably 100 times before.
It was there the whole time.
Yeah. And then you go share it with someone else and they're like, you finally noticed that?
Yeah, like, hey, man.
Oh, you just saw that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
did you just discover,
Right.
the book of Proverbs
Right.
today or
Yeah.
something? And so those new things that are springing up may not necessarily be a brand new creative thing. So what pops into my mind initially is worship music and worship times. Worship is not new.
Right.
Singing is not new. But we've kind of latched on to, elevation worship or these worship bands that are just church worship teams that are really talented and we love that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a new thing. I think it's something that has sprung up. If you go back 50 years, we didn't have people that were captivated by times of worship. They still worshiped, but it was different. So I think that's a new thing for us.
Yeah, I was just talking with somebody about this recently that like our kids, right, are 15, 14, 8, and 6. So they don't know church different than what we do here, right? They don't know different kinds of music. They don't know, like that's just their normal. And I think it's really interesting to think about, like, we're old enough that we remember, I grew up singing hymns and we had our little booklets and the...
Praise God from whom all blessings flow.
Yeah, so that was our normal. And now this is their normal, and it still feels kind of new to us sometimes, I think. But it's not, it's their normal. So it's not, you're right, like it's the this is maybe new to some people, but not new to other people. So I think it's interesting to look at how things shift and change and come in waves. And it makes me think about, when they're, in their 40s, will it go back?
Yeah.
Right? Will it revert to, we just want this simpler time and we want, to just sing this simpler chorus, or we want the deeper theology of the old hit. I don't know. It's interesting to think, but that will be new then, right?
Yeah.
Like if it changes, it will be new.
And that's one of the things about getting older. And I know that there are probably days when you guys feel like, we're so old.
Yes.
You're kids. Right? No, you're getting old. But you've already seen, and I see like the second, third iteration of something where like somebody starts doing something like, this is a fresh new, like, been around that block before.
Yeah.
I know where this is going.
Yeah.
And I'm excited a little bit for you, but just be cautious because I know where this is going to take you eventually, because it's not new.
Yeah.
It's been done. It looks a little different, but it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of the new thing probably today that hasn't been in the past are podcasts and the instant access to spiritual truths or teachings at your fingertips. But like every good thing, the flip side of that, there's the negative side.
Right.
And so when you start digging,
every Yahoo with a phone has a podcast.
Yep. And last night I was talking to one of our worship team members, plays the guitar, Jeff Kruger. I'll just say his name. And we were talking about his new guitar, and I was asking him about lessons, if he still teaches, and those kinds of things. And he said one of the challenges now is some of the younger kids, like they're like, I know how to play. I just watch YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that would be like someone saying, I know all there is about the Bible. I watched a YouTube tutorial. I know the Bible.
Yeah.
He said it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So yes, the good side, the fresh new thing that's springing up is instant access to spiritual teaching and truth, but with that comes a bunch of garbage, things that you can't just watch a YouTube and think, I know God now.
I know.
So
well, it's almost that. I think it's a great analogy because we were joking about this the other night. When we were growing up, there was something called tab, and so it was basically this way to write notation on.
No, I thought you were talking about the drink.
Soda. I did too. No. I was like, when were we talking about tab? I never
soda?
drank
guitar tab.
Yes.
So
guitar
as a
tabs.
guitar player, like I grew up and I actually had some music theory history. Like I had to play piano for a couple of years. I played percussion. And so when I started playing guitar, it's like, okay, here's the circle of fifths. Here's how you do chord structures. And I knew guys that we didn't have YouTube at the time, but there was these posts that you could get on the internet and it would show you exactly where to put your fingers, but it wasn't explaining any of the music theory behind it. It was like, you want to play this song, you put your fingers here at this time. And so,
what's wrong with that?
Nothing. But,
okay, because that's how I learned. Just put my finger. What is that? It doesn't matter. Just put them there and do it.
That's how it works. Yeah.
But that's, I think, this generation, what you're talking about. I think some of this generation is seeing the doing and they don't know the why behind it. And so it's very easy to get on YouTube and to get a tutorial of going, hey, put your fingers here and do this. And you're like, okay, I'll do that. And it's like, I have no idea why that works. I have no idea what the deeper truth of it behind it. I don't know the circle of fifths. I don't know the music theory behind it. But I can go and do a lot of things. And because we're kind of a doing culture, sometimes we can fall into, those traps that are laid because, like I said, it's a YouTube video. I'm so microwavable in my generation that I just want to do, and I don't stop to think about the why behind it.
But it's, again, just that analogy. It's awesome. I love being able to pull up and like, where do you put your fingers again? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
just show me,
Yeah, so that's an awesome thing. It's not the replacement. So it's that new thing that's fresh and exciting and I'm happy but it's not the end all be all.
Right.
And so
well, it's just I'm really excited about the new generation. Like I said, I think we're seeing a ton of things. I don't know if you guys saw there was just recently another kind of college revival thing where they were baptizing people in the back of pickup trucks. Like they literally were throwing tarps in the back of pickup trucks and filling them up with a hose because they had nowhere to baptize these kids. And they were just doing these, baptisms in the back of trucks. I think something is moving and stirring, but it's going to be interesting to see exactly what that materializes into.
Yeah.
But we were talking about this in the context of ripples in the water. We're talking about the butterfly effect, of course, and you're talking about these things that, we put something in our lives and it creates these ripples. And one of the things that you were talking about in kind of a relationship, like a new thing. So I make a bad decision and it starts to cause ripples in the lake. And it was funny because I looked at Charissa during the sermon. I was like, you know how you fix that? A bigger rock. And you were like, you know how you fix that? Is a bigger rock. I was like, amen, brother. Like,
preach it, white boy.
Yeah. So like, what does that actually look like in our life? When you talked about taking the rock of Jesus or taking a larger rock to disrupt all these ripples that are in your life and chucking it into the water to create even bigger ripples that are going to override. What does that look like practically for us?
So the good news, okay, for me, when I think about my life and the life of the vast majority of the people that I interact with, the good news is most of the ripples are little rocks. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, the bad news is there's a lot of little rocks, right? But the good news is they're little rocks. I don't know a lot. I know a few, but the vast majority of people are not strung out heroin addicts that have been heroin addicts since they were 12. But most of the people I know have made a bad decision here and they got involved in something there and they said something here and in those ripples. Okay? And so one big rock, right, offsets all those little ripples. So what I was trying to say is you can't just say, okay, I saw this one verse and I'm just going to throw that one verse and my life is going to change. Well, part of your life might change, but it doesn't change everything. And so the image that I had was taking the rock, Jesus, throwing it in the middle of my mess. And it doesn't just create, like when you throw a giant rock,
Right.
Like I was just watching a video, okay, the beauty of those internet stuff and the new thing.
Yeah.
The beauty is like you have all these illustrations and things that are right there that you can draw on. The bad side is you go down rabbit holes, you know?
Yes, you do.
And so I was watching a glacier, like a big rock, but a glacier come off the side of a ice cap and hit the water, and the giant wave that was created. It's like, it was fascinating. I had no idea how I was going to use that in a sermon, but it was fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I saw that, I thought, that's a great analogy of something big. So then I took it back to throwing a big rock in and having bigger ripples. And so Jesus changes everything. And so you have to get to that point where you say, I am tired of dealing with all these little ripples, and everything is going to change, and my life is going to be focused on Christ, the solid rock, and you throw that rock out into the water, and it just splashes and creates all kinds of waves and ripples, and so it's doing something dramatic.
Right.
It makes me think of, in Instagram, there's a lot of videos that it says it's content for men, and it's always dudes throwing rocks into, it's like, or like they get like a sheet of ice and they toss it and it breaks, and it's all the guys in the comments like, oh my gosh, it's awesome. Perfect. We love it. I don't know what it is about men and throwing rocks into water, but
there is something cool about skipping rocks over the water.
It's primal. What do you think, Charissa? What is something that you would have like try to explain that to somebody like, what does it mean to throw a bigger rock in?
Well,
what's an example of that?
I love that. I love visuals also. So the glacier picture, that's cool. I'm going to keep that in my mind. But I was thinking as you were talking about that, we did a series back in the fall called Foundations. And so just talking about where you build your foundation is going to kind of determine, the shape of your house, right? Like how well you build your foundation determines how steady and stable your house is. So if I'm course correcting, right? If it's these little rocks have created little ripples, like continual little ripples, you got to do something drastic, but it's about going back to your foundation and shoring that up. And so it's like, yes, not just a verse, right? It's not just, I get up early one day. It's not just, I read a devotional on my Bible app it took me 5 minutes and I did it for 3 days and now my whole life is better, right? It's the long obedience in the same direction, right? It's the continual process of developing that. I think that, yes, you can throw a rock one time, right?
And it makes a difference.
And it makes a difference, but eventually,
But then there's going to be
yeah, there's going to be and it stops, right? Like eventually, if you throw nothing else, then that stops. The motion stops happening, and so it's like you have to come back to the rock of Jesus. You have to keep coming back to that, and you have to keep, bringing that into your life. You can't just be like, I did that once, and I'm good. I think, and that's when we're talking about the next generation too. I think the instant gratification culture kind of teaches us that, right? Like I do something once and it's going to have this effect on my life, but I don't persist in it, right? I don't keep doing it.
So another word picture, right? So as you're talking, something I love to do, it's stupid, right? But
Oh, please share.
yeah. But like when I'm near a body of water, a pond or a lake or whatever, and you have access to lots of little rocks, if you take a whole handful and just chuck them up in the air and then just watch them hit the ground at different times. So the word picture is that's what we do with our life. We have all these stupid things, these bad decisions, and we chuck them out there and they start splashing in the water. And then we've got this little pebble, our devotional time on Tuesday. I'm going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
And I did my part.
Right,
and then we're confused of, well, why are there still ripples?
Right.
So, yeah.
no, absolutely.
That's good.
And I just think that when we're talking about, how do we disrupt these flows? I thought about what you were saying about, like you got to make a difference, dude. I always think about things that lead to one another, like chained things. This may sound silly, but like I was reading something and some guy, he just made a video and he said, it's amazing how if you just get a couple of chickens, that turns into a couple of goats, which turns into I want to grow my own food, which means I want to live off the grid, which means I don't trust the government, which means like, and he just like talks about like this whole thing where like everybody talks about this thing and we talk about it and joke about it where people are like, I just want a few acres. And it's like how I just want a few acres starts turning into I want to grow my own food. I don't want to eat processed food. I want to have chickens and live it. And it just starts, I want to drink raw milk. And it's like, it starts this whole lifestyle of how do we pick that one thing that is going to lead to something else. So it's like when we choose Jesus Christ, like a lot of times the things that we're throwing into our lives, they don't go anywhere, and it's like to throw the rock of Jesus Christ in our life. If we're really doing that, it should lead us somewhere. It should lead to, if we get up and say, I want to go paleo or something like that, I want to change my diet. It can't just be like, I want to eat meat for one day. It's, I have to change my diet and then I lose a bunch of weight. And then I'm like, I kind of like how this feels. If I want to maintain this, I got to start exercising. Well, now I'm exercising and I'm dieting and I'm doing, it's like, it starts to create, a life change. And then I think a lot of times what happens then is it changes, what happens in our family. I had, one of the guys I listened to, he makes this argument that he says, it's like, if you have a family and one of the teenage girls all of a sudden decides that she's vegan, right? Then it's like, so now mom's making 2 dinners, whoever's cooking is making 2 dinners. It's like, I gotta have the vegan option. I got the regular option. Well, that's too hard. So now we're all going to be vegan. And then we go down to the neighborhood barbecue and they're like, hey, you want a burger? No, we're vegan. And then everybody's like, well, that's kind of silly and awkward. So now we're going to have a vegan. And it's like, it starts to change your community. What is the thing? How do you pick the thing really well in your life that leads to something else?
Yeah. Which again, the good news is making a decision to have one daily devotional time has the possibility of changing everything.
Right.
Now you do have to continue it.
Yeah.
But you can't continue it if you don't start it. Right. So
Right,
that first
right.
time has the possibilities
Yeah.
of leading to the next time and then becoming a pattern and just a part of your daily disciplines, and that changes not just your life, but your family's life. And so it's that principle of firsts. You have to do something first. You can't just say, I want to be different. I mean, you can, but it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
If you say, I want to be different, then you have to be willing to do something different once.
So would that be your thing? Like if we're talking about challenging our listeners to try something new this week, is it the daily devotion thing for you? What's the thing you're like, hey, if you could just do this one thing, like if it's the chickens, you get 3 chickens and it's going to lead to goats and land, and you're like, what's the thing for you?
So in our men's group, what I challenged the men with last night which I hesitated challenging them because I hate it. It's like, I'm terrible at this.
Oh, no.
And so as it was coming out of my mouth, I'm like, why am I doing this? But prayer journal.
I hate journaling.
I know, a prayer journal. And so I tried to lower the bar low enough that I felt like I could accomplish this, which is just don't write what you think of a journal,
Right.
like page and page and page.
Dearest
But
Father.
2 or 3 things that you're wanting to pray for. Just think of it in terms of a prayer request, not a journal. Just jot a few things down.
Prayer bullet points.
Yeah. And then build on that. So a prayer journal would be the thing because that it gets us going in the right direction in a lot of different ways, right? So if you're doing a prayer journal, you're probably going to have a Bible nearby. So you're going to get into the Word. You're going to be having conversation with the Father. You're going to be thinking about other people and ways to serve them and pray for them and support them. And so, as bad as I hate to say it, prayer journal.
That's a little
that's
bit.
my final answer.
That's a little bit like if you give a mouse a cookie, right?
Yeah,
like
so-
if you have a prayer journal,
Yeah.
then you probably have your Bible, and you're probably
Yeah.
talking to
Yeah.
God more, and you're it ripple effects
yeah,
for sure.
the ripples. So
for sure.
that's my final
good one.
answer. I'm going to go
Final
with
answer.
that.
What'd you go with,
That's
Charissa?
a good one. I don't know. I just think it's always about persistence. You know, it's about challenging yourself. Some of the ladies that are in my freedom table right now were like, I just really feel like the thing I'm struggling with is getting up early, and I want to do that. I feel like God's put that on my heart, and so like we started a text group. I was like, well, I'm already up, so I'll be in your text group. Great, that's awesome, because that's a thing for me that I just started doing that. So I'm like, that's not hard for me anymore. I'd love to encourage you in that. And so we have a group text every morning. We just do a check-in, like, good morning. Good morning. Like, that's it. Everybody's up. Let's just, and then it's not intense accountability, but it's that
something.
like, hey, it's going to get me up in the morning. It's that motivational thing. So I would say accountability is a big thing. Like, just if there's something like you're like, I need to take this next step, like, tell somebody, right? Tell somebody that you're doing that and ask them to check in with you. I think that's a big piece of progressing. And just making sure somebody's asking you about that, you're more likely to do it, right? You know, my kids are more likely to clean their room if I'm asking them if their room is clean. If I don't ask them, it will be a dumpster fire, right? Like, it's just a pigsty down there. So I would say accountability would be a great step to take. If there's something I feel like I should be doing this, I'm feeling a little bit convicted, like I want to take this next step, bring somebody into that with you and have them check on you and check on each other. You know,
So
maybe
you
do that
can't
for each other.
expect what you don't inspect.
Woo!
Right?
Did you just come up with that?
No, I heard that before.
Oh,
I'm
that
not
was
that
good.
smart, but it is good.
No,
It just,
that was good.
it's just random files in
That's
there, you know?
That's
what-
something stored away back there.
It's like I always say.
It's like, I've always said this.
That's good. And I did want to say on the prayer journal thing is that I actually did that last year. The Bible app that I use has like a daily, right? Like a verse and then a time for meditation and a prayer thing, like prayer prompts, and you can type in your prayers. And so I did that actually all last year, and it's really interesting to go back through it. They're not long, like to your point, they're not long entries. It's really just, Lord, I'm praying about this today. And to go back through, and also, you know, we're supposed to remember God's faithfulness in our lives. And so for me, that's been a huge thing to be like, oh man, like God, yes, I remember that being stressful. I remember how I felt about that. And I can look back now and see how the Lord took care of that.
Yeah. So
situation.
answered prayers are great.
Yeah.
And if people are listening, is it just the Bible app
Yeah.
that you're doing that on?
It's the Bible app. Yeah. That's like the homepage for me is it's the daily verse. And then there's someone talks about the daily verse, and then there's a guided prayer time, and you can just type that in. I just put the date as the title, and I type my stuff in. So that's been really cool.
My thing is going to lead into my next question, because the next question I want to ask you, you guys can think about this, is when you're talking about challenging people to return to their first love, what is the thing that you personally do when you start to feel that, where you're like, oh, this is becoming a task? Like, what's the thing that you use to get back to your first love? Because for me, these two things are related, and it's a little bit convicting right now, because I would tell people that if you want to throw that big ripple in, you change what you listen to. whether that be saying like, hey, I'm just not ever going to listen to secular music. I'm going to listen to the things that bring me into praise. When I'm on my commute, I'm going to listen to Christian stuff. And I feel convicted about that now because every year I go snowboarding, and I don't know what it is, but I snowboard better to like early 2000s pop punk.
Of course you do.
So it's funny because I actually went with my friend Mike, and Mike's like, how do you like put headphones in? It distracts me. Like when I'm like, no man, it helps me. It gets me in the rhythm. But usually like I tried to make a playlist that's like, because one day on the mountain I was listening to like early 2000s pop punk. And then it's the next day I was like listening to Maverick City. So I'm like on the mountain snowboarding. It's just like, you're not done with me yet. And then, just crash. And so I just got to believe in faith. But so then like usually when I come back from the snowboarding trip, it takes me a little while. Like I'm like, I feel drawn to that music again. I'm like, no. I have to wean myself off of it again and get back into what am I listening to? And honestly, there are days where Christian music, I like Christian music, but some days I'm like, it's just not doing it. And so I'll literally flip over and listen to a podcast because I would rather, I'm like, I'm not feeling it today. And so I'll listen to a podcast, which again, if I'm listening to something that's uplifting, if it's something that's, teaching, then I'm still filling my head with the good things of the Lord. And so I would say like, it starts to change your palate in a way that it's like, even if you don't want to listen to Christian music, you would listen to something that's the word.
Sure.
And so I always think of that verse where it's faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word.
Yeah.
And so I just think if you can just say, hey, listen, my ears are reserved for praise, it's gonna change what you do throughout the day. But that's, for me, that again is that thing where I start to feel myself slipping, where I'll start going, I listened to the news like 3 times today and I didn't listen to any word. Or, I feel drawn to this, music again. And it's like, I really need to change my palette. And that really helps me reconnect with the Lord. And so like for you guys, what is the thing that you use to kind of reconnect?
That's a good question.
So yeah, when I sense I'm slipping kind of from my first love that is kind of wavering a little bit, it's the one thing I go to is prayer, reading the word, worshiping, and spending time with Jesus. And
The one thing.
We all know it's Don. What's it said? I almost said Don Corleone. What's the Don that you listen to all the time?
I don't know.
Oh, maybe.
Listen to.
Ron Canoli.
Ron Canoli.
I know that it's Ron Canoli
Ron
for you.
Canoli. I don't know what the one thing. It's just generally it's everything.
It's getting back in that routine.
It's like everything just kind of goes, and I gotta reset and
refocus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
Mine is I love to be outside. So if I feel really overwhelmed, I'm starting to feel anxious about things, I'm feeling really stressed out, I know that that's a sign for me that I need to kind of refocus. I need to come back to my first love of Jesus, and I try to get outside. For me, that's very centering. It's very grounding. That's always a place where I feel like it's very obvious God is on display outside in nature, in the world. And so,
and bird watching.
bird watching.
It's about the bunny time,
Oh
man.
gosh,
So,
like
isn't your dad a
my
bird
dad
yeah,
is a big,
so, like,
big
that's
bird
what
watcher,
yeah.
and I weirdly know a lot about birds.
There you go.
So yeah,
It's a short
There
journey
is that.
from I'm in my 20s to, is that a swallowtail? I don't know.
you don't know.
I don't
know.
know.
Don't act like you
Yeah,
know.
don't.
She's teaching the girls all these birds, and I'm like, do not care.
Evie was
That
like,
one looks red.
yeah. Evie said, "Mommy, you sure know a lot about birds." I said, "Yeah, that's my
Not
dad
by
did
choice.
that. My dad did that."
Nerd alert.
I was force fed.
Well, thank you guys for joining us in 167. I hope you join us here next week. And, this week, try and throw a big rock in.
Yeah.
Pick something.
Yeah,
Just do something.
yeah.
We'll see you guys next time. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardener.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.